It's the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. Earlier this summer, we saw the emergence of new cancer research and therapies that are creating positive outcomes for dogs. That work is also creating new opportunities for treating cancer in humans. And some of the research is happening right here in Illinois at the U of I College of Veterinary Medicine. Some of the people involved in the project were spotlighted in an episode of the pet-themed public television series called Shelter Me. Let's listen to a clip.
We're often asked, why dogs? Why should you use dogs in this sort of comparative way? And how can they help us advance these types of therapies? And I think when we think about dogs, we recognize not only do they have very similar genetics to humans, but they also share our environment. They're walking next to us. They share our food. They often sleep with us. And so oftentimes, when we think about cancers, there are genetic cues for cancers and there's environmental cues as well.
This episode of Shelter Me is called The Cancer Pioneers. It aired earlier in the summer and is available year-round on the PBS Passport app. We spoke to some of the experts involved earlier this year as well. Joining us for this conversation was Timothy Phan, the Kahn Family Chair and Professor of Veterinary Clinical Medicine at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Also Rebecca Kammerer, Clinical Trial Coordinator, and Joanna Schmidt, Lecturer in Medical Oncology, also at the University of Illinois in Urbana. Because this conversation's on tape, no calls, but you can let us know what you thought by emailing talk@21stshow.org. All right, Dr. Timothy Phan, welcome again. I'm going to start with you. What is comparative oncology?
So comparative oncology is really the study of cancer across different species. And I think that, the whole hope of, highlighting this PBS special is really to educate what do we understand about cancer that affects people, but also affects pets. But historically, comparative oncology has been really not exclusively including pets. It has traditionally been through the study of cancers that may be seen in fruit flies or zebrafish, or more classically, tumor models of mice, right? And so I think that the value that we as veterinarians bring to the table is to study naturally occurring tumors, right? So most models of cancer are induced, right? So we're creating cancer in a mouse model, and that's artificial in many ways. It's still a valuable tool, but there are limitations and there's artificiality to it. And really in the era of immunotherapy, it becomes more and more difficult to have very predictive and good models. And again, this is where we think pet dogs or pet cats that naturally develop cancers in a setting of normal immune surveillance become exceptionally good patients that we can treat and improve their care for, but at the same time inform and identify new therapies that could be helpful for people as well.
Dr. Joanna Schmidt, let me ask you about what are some similarities between cancer in humans and dogs?
Some of the similarities that we see are age of development of cancers. So in dogs, we can see osteosarcoma developing around 2 years old, and then again when they're older, closer to 10. And that can mimic things like osteosarcoma in juvenile humans. We also see similarities in where they appear, what types of cancers. So melanomas are common, sarcomas are common across animals and people. And we can also see similarities as far as the actual disease progress. So how it progresses, how rapidly or how slowly. So the nice thing about, say, dogs and cats versus something like a mouse model is the actual disease progression is natural and similar to people versus more rapid in a smaller model like a mouse.
All right, we have to take a short break. When we come back, more on the cancer research taking place on the U of I campus. This is the 21st show. Stay with us. It's the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. Let's get back to our conversation on cancer research in dogs that's also helping people. This research was recently featured in an episode of the PBS series Shelter Me. The episode is called The Cancer Pioneers. Our guests for this conversation were Dr. Timothy Fan, a veterinary professor at the U of I Urbana-Champaign, Dr. Joanna Schmidt, lecturer in medical oncology at the U of I, and Rebecca Kammerer, clinical trial coordinator from U of I. Because we're on tape for the show today, no calls, but you can let us know what you think by leaving us a voicemail at 217 300 2121. All right, Rebecca Kammerer, I'm going to bring you into the conversation now. Tell us a little about Milton's story.
Milton is such a wonderful story of a family with a young child and their, companion Milton, who was a pup that had a oral melanoma in his mouth. And they were presented a number of different options to help combat that tumor. And they chose a clinical trial to do something a little bit of outside the normal box. They were eager to uh, try something for Milton, also to be able to hopefully help future dogs, outside of just that trial, but knowledge beyond that trial, and hopefully future humans of what we are able to develop and learn from his story. And he was just such a brave patient during all of it. Still a very brave dog, doing well, and just a really, really wonderful group of people to work with.
Dr. Fan, talk about what has developed in, I don't know, say the last 15 years in this kind of cancer research and treatment.
Sure. I think that the main developments in the treatment of cancer has really focused on what we call precision medicine, in which we develop small molecules that are able to target key pathways that are used by cancer cells. And even more provocatively and exciting is immunotherapy, right? So immunotherapy is the whole idea about training your own immune system to recognize cancer cells and get rid of those cancer cells and essentially try to cure those patients. And so immunotherapy for people in 2013, it was heralded as the breakthrough science discovery of the year. And there are tens of thousands of clinical trials in people right now evaluating novel immunotherapies. And I think in the case of pet dogs, we've seen these great success stories in people in leveraging the immune response. And pet dogs, we are also on that cusp of really developing some very parallel, similar strategies that are working in people. And so I think that really over the next 5 years, there's going to be a flood of immunotherapeutic strategies that become commercially available for pet dogs. Hopefully, pet cats will follow that as well. And I think the important thing about immunotherapy is that while it can be a life-changing treatment for people, and we expect that those life-changing benefits can also be reaped by pet dogs and pet cats, it still is a minority population that benefit from it, right? So in people, we're getting maybe 20 to 30% response. Those people that respond are often cured, so that's great. But we do need to continue research in expanding the swath of patients that can be benefited from immunotherapy.
And Joanna Schmidt, I want to ask about President Biden had announced this Cancer Moonshot initiative, and I wonder if that affected the field of comparative oncology, how it affected your work. It's one of those things you don't actually hear that much about, obviously, maybe because he's out of office. I suppose that's obvious, but I wonder what effect that had on your work.
For us directly here, not a big impact. A lot of our funding and drive either comes from internal or from working with other organizations like Morris Animal Foundation or us pairing with other groups that have funding available. I think the best part about it was really just drawing more attention getting the public eye to know that this is a key thing to focus on, where funding can and cannot come from, and to really broaden the general public's knowledge of what the struggles are and where we're headed.
And maybe I should have phrased it like more directly philosophically. I think one of the things he was talking about is making, cancer more of a chronic disease than a life sentence. I wonder what you think about as a possibility. I mean, we have seen that happen to some extent with HIV in our lifetimes. Is this something that could conceivably happen with cancer?
Certainly, we have some cancers that already are chronic diseases for our pets. Some things like mast cell tumors, some plasma cell related diseases are things that we can manage for years in pets, which years in a pet would equate to decades in a human. So we have a very big split of cancers that we can manage very well long term, and then some that are highly aggressive that don't have a long survival time or a high survival rate. And those tend to be the ones that we really focus on trials, is where can we improve survival and how can we get those pets to live out their natural lifespan. If a pet develops cancer at 8 or 9, but could have made it to 12 or 13, that would be an excellent success for that family and for that animal.
Rebecca Kammerer, I want to ask you again. What talk about the relationship that you have with some of these dogs you're working with? Humans have their own very particular responses to cancer, and I can only imagine how it might be different with a dog. Talk about how you sort of take a dog through this process.
That's a great question, and definitely a large part of what we consider every time that we're in the room with an owner and sort of trying to decide and help them make decisions for their pet, because oftentimes these are just as much of a family member as a husband, wife, or a kid. And so we take a lot of ownership and thought process in the fact that our patients can't speak to us and tell us how they are feeling, and try to do our best with the knowledge that we have about their cancer or about pain, any general type of medical thing that we can use to assess and bring that owner back that information. And in that time period, for sure, for us that get to see them often and spend that time with those pets, we begin to develop a bond with them, and get to know them personally. So it becomes a very heartwarming journey, I think, for all of us to be able to take together, and makes it very, very easy to come to work each day and get to see those patients.
Timothy Fan, I wonder what sort of obstacles you encounter in this work. You do sometimes hear medical researchers talking about, regulation and getting government approval to do this sort of things, university panels and stuff. Do you run into some of those same obstacles doing veterinary work?
Yeah, I think that, certainly when we are running clinical trials, these are always voluntary, right? So I think one component of it is pet owners provide information on what is traditional therapy available. They're also informed about investigational clinical trials that we're doing here. I don't think that there are regulatory obstacles beyond what we traditionally do with institutional use and care committee work. So I don't think that there are obstacles there. So I think the biggest obstacle in some of these type of trials will be often reagents, right? So what is available that is specifically used in a dog or cat is often different than what we would use in a person. And so we can't necessarily take a therapy that is done in people and immediately translate it to help dogs or cats, because often those reagents are humanized, right? So they are specifically for people. They're often proteins that are designed so that a person will not react to it. But if you were to give that same protein to a dog or cat, it would be viewed as foreign, and that dog and cat would not tolerate that type. So I think the obstacles are more wide commercialization of reagents or therapeutics that can be used in dogs and cats widely.
I have to ask, there's been this attention on National Institutes of Health funding. So many human research studies are being affected by what's happening with the administration in Washington trying to really exert its will on higher education and using funding as a tool for that. Has there been talk of this in the veterinary world? Is there something parallel that's happening there that maybe just hasn't gotten the same level of mass public attention?
I think that if funding for clinical trials comes from the federal government, right, through the NCI, then certainly there will be some potential trickle down that it could hurt our clinical trials. So we do work with basic scientists, and we do compete for R01 funding or U01 funding. These are all funded through the NCI, and so if there is a budgetary rescission, then there simply will be less money to go around. And so I would expect that there could be some, lessening of these clinical trials. I think for most people in veterinary medicine, a lot of it are foundation-based, right? So these are foundations that have a mission statement that they really want to improve pet care or animal health care. I think they're less affected by, philosophies of science right now. But obviously the dollar amounts that can be supported by these private foundations it's considerably smaller and limited compared to federal funding.
Yeah. All right, we're coming to the end of our time together. I guess I want to end on a more maybe philosophical note. In the film, there is a teenager getting treatment for cancer. His name is Mossy, and his father says something along the lines of, there are no coincidences here, right? And we're thinking about this connection between humans and pets and this pioneering medical treatment. And I don't know, Joanna Schmidt, let me ask you, do you ever get that sense, that feeling about your work? There are no coincidences here.
Yeah, I think that's holds true in a lot of what we do. I think professionally that has shown itself to us in where we end up in our careers, but also I think even just if you really look less philosophically and more evolutionarily, it does make sense. So I think that's a fair statement, and I think we meet people, we meet collaborators, we meet peers, we come to universities, we do all of these things, and really the reward for us is seeing things to come to fruition from our work. Sometimes it's years and years down the path, but we see it. And I do agree. I think that's a great way to put it. And I think that's what keeps us here every day, keeps us motivated, and keeps us excited about what we do is, forwarding discovery, helping pets foremost because we're veterinarians, but also helping humans.
Joanna Schmidt is a lecturer in medical oncology at the U of I Urbana-Champaign. Rebecca Kammerer is clinical trial coordinator for some of the work we've been talking about, also at U of I. And Timothy Phan is professor in veterinary clinical medicine at U of I. Thank you all so much for sharing some of your work with us today on the 21st Show. Again, the show is called Shelter Me, and the episode is The Cancer Pioneers. You can find it right now on the PBS Passport app. Before we go, I want to invite you to join our texting group. It's a great way for listeners to share comments and questions about the show. You can join by sending the word TALK, T-A-L-K, to 217-803-0730. Again, send the word TALK to 217-803-0730. You can now also find our show on YouTube, as well as everywhere else you get your podcasts. Just search for Illinois Public Media. The 21st Show is produced by Christine Hatfield, Harrison Malkin, and Jose Zepeda. Our digital producer is Kulsum Khan. Technical direction and engineering comes from Jason Croft and Steve Mork. Reginald Hardwick is our news director. The 21st Show is a production of Illinois Public Media. I'm Brian Mackey. Thanks for listening. We'll talk with you again tomorrow.